What strikes me listening to, well, the three of you, perhaps excluding David, is that, it seems as if, there are, or should I say, this is really directed to Prince Carlos and John Hanke, is that the solutions are there, we can find them, here's an example, here's another example, and they are inspiring examples, but we look at the bigger picture, we look at the American election, we look at the economies as they stand. We've known about climate change for at least 10 or 15 or 20 years, and we've seen very little in the way of a political will to do anything about it. And I'm wondering a sort of a bigger question here, really, and that is, do we think that democracy, the process by which we run our countries, is ever going to be able to act quickly enough, decisively enough? I've been involved in a series in China the last couple of years, and as I said this morning, the combination of slightly terrifying authoritarianism that can put on a display like the opening of the Olympic Games, combined with the sort of impressiveness of it, who else could do that, leads you to wonder whether, when push comes to shove, whether we need much more firm government intervention, because by democracy I don't see really any. How many Green members of Parliament are there here? Is it zero? I wonder whether we can ever really expect our democratic ways, which we value so deeply, to lead us to a solution. David, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I don't think we've got any option, really. The first thing is that democracy has to be informed. And that's where all you lot and this lot, all of us, I don't think we're engaged in escapism, making our kind of programs. I think what we are making is something that is absolutely essential for an informed democracy. That is the first stage. People have to know about nature, and let's not forget that over 50% of the population of this world are now urbanized, according to the United Nations. The majority of people are out of touch with the natural world, which is a terrible thing. But at the same time that they are out of touch, they have the potential to be the best informed in history, because they will understand more about biological processes, understand more about the biological population of this world than has ever happened before. Now, it's our job to make sure that is that what they tell them is true, and that what we tell them is also attractive, so they want to listen about it. But when they do, I actually don't think we have any alternative to democracy, because in the end, the future of dictatorship is clear. You can see perfectly well from history. We cannot do anything else but hope that the population of the world will be aware of the problem and be behind the solutions. It may take time, and you may say we haven't got enough time, but I don't think that we can be any more dictatorial than, let us say, the French.
This morning, Jim actually drew an interesting analogy with a war footing, where confronted with a common enemy, there might be a situation where a government might step in and say, right, we're going to have to do this, we're going to have to do that. Jim, do you want to speak to that for a moment?
Only just to say that the phrase, for the duration, I think makes all the difference in the world. It may well be that in the course of the next decade or so, climate situations will arise in different nations of the world where it's necessary to suspend democracy for the duration, because the climate change doesn't go on forever. It can't. We'd fry. But it may well be necessary, as it was in wartime. And it's done with agreement. In a sense, it's democratic. It's just you delay the next election for an undefined period.
Yes, but Armageddon is a long way off, in fact. If you said, if the government could say the solution to this will be worked out if you will follow us for the next 5 years, if they could say that with surety, yes, that would be okay, but they can't.
And it would be silly, and the worst possible thing would be for us to freeze in our positions and say there's nothing at all we can do and just to stop, because I think there's a path out. But I certainly think it's one where it's going to be from the bottoms up. I don't think it'll be dictated from the top down.
I hate to disagree with you, but as
you have a debate.
As someone old enough to have been a working scientist in World War II, I can assure you that the rate of innovation was absolutely phenomenal. Mind you, it was mostly connected towards wartime things, but an awful lot of them have been very valuable afterwards. If you want a single example, radar hastened the development of the magnetron, which is in the heart of every microwave cooker in every home, which is a slightly green device in that it uses less electricity than an oven. But
I guess, in a broader sense, when you look at who won the war, was it the sort of top-down dictatorships, or was it the democratic world where you had this broad participation?
It wasn't democratic. We had no elections during the war.
But the economies that the economies and the innovation and the people that were in place so that they could be applied in that setting arose in open societies. Right?
I think really what we're talking about, occasionally situations arise like a war, where there is by consensus amongst the whole of the nation an agreement that we will suspend politics, which are somewhat wasteful and unhelpful, for the duration of the war. And I envisage such a situation arising in climate change sometime during this century. If not here, then somewhere. For that, then let's forget democracy temporarily.
What I would say to you, John, is surely what's happened over the last few months with the financial crashes around the world, and starting off in the US, is a sign that unregulated systems as they're standing are simply not solving problems or building a sustainable future. I mean, isn't there a sort of an example staring us in the face here of how the system as it stands is failing us?
Well, I don't think regulation is synonymous with democracy. I mean, governments that do the will of the people are what a democracy is about. So the people may very well say that, we need stronger regulations on power generation. We may need a carbon tax. We may need a number of things that we don't have today. But I'm just saying that the voice for that should come from, the broad base of the population, not from a sort of climate dictator.
Well, I'd say surely the broad base of the population would rather not have lost $700 billion to an ideology which has now been demonstrated to fail.
But that was because they didn't understand that you can't just go on burning money beyond your means, and that was that was ignorance on the part of the population,
but isn't this
and a consequence of the honeyed words of bankers.
But what about the honeyed words? What about the honeyed words of politicians who say, "Don't worry, climate change isn't real"?
That's why I'm saying what we are involved in, all of us here, is an important activity, because it is making sure that people do understand, or doing our best to it, do understand what the points at issue are.